Okay. Hi, Brianna. How are you?
Hi, doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here. My first question is, are you in London right now?
I am coming to you from Kelso, Washington, here in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, okay. Because on your bio it says that you're from Washington State, but you currently live in London. Are you still living in London?
I
You're just,
I do live and work in London. I work as a climate change researcher, but I am home to celebrate the launch of We Don't Have Time for This, which is also set in the Pacific Northwest.
oh, okay, great. How do you like London?
I really like it. They don't love peanut butter as much as I would like, but other than that, it's a very nice city.
Peanut butter. Yeah, that's not a very British food, is it? But they do love their tea. There is a lot of tea.
Yes,
Yeah.
they have me hooked on tea as well, so I'm staying very hydrated, which is good.
Oh, that's great. So, what took you to London? Was it your work, basically, or why did you decide to go there and live?
So I was hired out of my master's program to work for the International Institute for Environment and Development as a climate change researcher. I spend my days following the UN climate change negotiations, and Europeans devote a lot of resources and researchers into those negotiations, whereas here in America, we do not. So was hired out of my master's program to work and live over there.
I know King Charles is very proactive in environmental issues. Does he support the group that you work for?
So he's certainly been a vocal advocate for international cooperation on climate change. We work as an independent research organization, and actually, I primarily provide research support for the group of least developed countries, which are African and Asian nations who work together in the climate negotiations.
And you've got a book out called We Don't Have Time for This, and I see another book there. I can't quite read the title. What is the other book?
So last year, I was fortunate to publish a memoir called Everything That Rises, a climate change memoir. And this year, my first novel came out, We Don't Have Time for This, which is a young adult novel,
Okay.
both about climate change and environmental justice.
Oh, they both. Okay, that's what I was going to ask if that one was had climate issues in it. Okay. Why did you decide to write the second book? Was there something that inspired you to do that?
I actually auditioned to write the second book. So, as I said, I work as a climate change researcher who had been dabbling in writing. But the folks at Disney wanted something for teenagers with environmental justice themes, and they auditioned writers to write it. And I was really fortunate to be the one they chose. So, 3 years later, We Don't Have Time for This.
Oh, that's fantastic. You said you auditioned for Disney. Are they planning on making this into an animated feature?
Well, they've done a lovely job bringing the characters to life on the cover. If the book sells well and people really like it, they'll certainly want more of the story. We Don't Have Time for This is Issa and Darius, the main characters, their junior year of high school, so we'll want to hear what they get up to next. And, if people love it enough, well, they'll want to see it. And so they will consider adapting it into some kind of visual presentation, which is really exciting.
Yeah, that is. That's terrific. Well, congratulations on that. That's exciting. Why don't you give us just a kind of an overview of the book and the characters and how the climate change aspect works into the story?
So our two main characters are Issa. Issa is a community-driven. She's our heroine. She's 16, and she's thrilled to be starting her third year at Lakewood High in Washington State. She's moved around a lot as a kid, and she's so excited to finally call somewhere home. But when wildfires break out and the construction of a new natural gas pipeline threatens her dad's job, it really kicks her into doing something about the state of the world that she's experiencing and pushes her to join the school's environmental justice club. And that's where she meets Darius. Darius, who's also 16, is a straight-laced, overachieving member of the Advanced Placement Squad. He wants to be president of the Environmental Justice Club because he says it will look good on his college applications. And as you can imagine, Issa and Darius butt heads right from the beginning and sparks fly. Darius is African American and Issa's father is from American Samoa.
I'm going to assume that they fall in love at some point in this book.
It It is a romance, so I am hoping that, their chemistry and their tension keep readers turning pages to see when and if Darius and Issa are finally going to get together. It makes a great summer read for that.
Who are these characters? Are they somebody that you've known in your life or part of your life, or composites of people that you may have encountered in your life?
I mean, I would say they're people I hoped I went to high school with, but really, I think they're different elements of my own personality and represent my own journey in getting involved with combating the climate crisis. I am very Darius, or I certainly was when I was in high school. I was an overachiever myself, graduated valedictorian, and really wanted to do things by the book. But when I was 19, I first learned about climate change in a college lecture hall, and it gave me a panic attack, completely changed the course of my life, sent me off to be a climate researcher. And as I've gone on and realized how big of a change we need and how creative we need to be in imagining the new future we need, it's pushed me more towards Issa's way of doing things, of really getting everybody together and thinking creatively about telling stories and making art and doing all kinds of things that bring everyone to the table. So Issa and Darius are parts of me, and I hope parts of everyone. I hope everyone can identify with elements of them.
Let's talk a little bit about climate change. What is the seriousness of it? Because we have people that have said it's extremely serious, that the time bomb is ticking, and other people have claimed that it's just nonsense and that it's not real and it's only being amplified for political agendas. What is the situation with our climate?
Our climate is in crisis. We have human activity has fundamentally altered the climate that we live in now, and we need to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We need to stop using fossil fuels and create systems in which we derive energy from renewable resources that are community owned, that are efficient, in order to get us back on track to have a climate that's livable for everyone. As a climate researcher and as someone who grew up in the Pacific Northwest, I am particularly disturbed by wildfires and just the havoc they wreak year after year now. And in fact, we don't have time for this opens with the characters experiencing such a wildfire where it really is just apocalyptic outside. You can't breathe the air, it's raining smoke, you don't know if you can evacuate in time to get away from the flames. It's terrifying. And so I think that reality now, particularly with young people, is just so unignorable that we are really living in a climate in crisis. And it's going to take all of us to change the system for the better and create a world that's safe for everybody.
How do we get the rest of the world on board? Because there are countries that are still developing. They're using fossil fuels and coal at a record rate because they're trying to develop their industry. How do you tell those people you better shut it down?
I think the first thing we can do is recognize that we as Americans have an outsized role to play in combating the climate crisis. We are the largest cumulative emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. We have the most work to do in transforming our energy system. And we have built the legacy that people look towards when they want to develop. And so we really need to start at home in changing what we do here and the image we project. In the UN system, I work in the UN climate negotiations, and it really is universally accepted that the climate crisis is happening and all countries have a role to play in addressing it. I think the countries that don't get a lot of airtime but are actually doing the most are the countries that are most impacted by climate change. I work for the least developed countries group. They are the countries the UN classifies as the world's poorest. They are in Africa and in Asia. They emit under 1% of greenhouse gas emissions, yet they are 5 times more likely to die in climate-enhanced disasters. And they are coming to the table saying that they will develop cleanly because they recognize so starkly how much we need action. The Caribbean and small island states are exactly the same. They are hit by hurricane after hurricane, and even though they don't emit the most emissions, they are willing to emit nothing in the near future because they recognize so starkly how dire the climate crisis is. So I think there is worldwide consensus, and America has a leading role to play in combating the crisis, but we need to start at home.
So lead by example.
Exactly.
Okay. Assuming that we can all get to zero emissions on this planet, is it going to reverse the damage that's already been done?
We have a long way to go to get to zero emissions, so that is where we need to start. Climate change, as we know, is a slow, the greenhouse effect builds slowly. And so we have locked ourselves into this new climate crisis reality. We can only hope that by bringing emissions down to zero, we will eventually reach a state that is more stable and bring the temperature down. We're a long ways off from that, though, because as we know, greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise as we continue to burn fossil fuels.
So is the elimination of fossil fuels on its own going to do it? Or are we going to have to do more than just that?
Eliminating fossil fuels is a big challenge. It will take everything we can bring to the table in order to do it, to derive enough energy, well, first to use less, but then to derive enough energy to meet our needs is going to be massive. And this is the challenge America needs to set itself in the next several years, but as soon as possible. And then once that is done, we can continue to look forward to helping other nations who are developing, as you mentioned, also be using low emitting technologies that bring their emissions down. And once we eventually get everyone to a place where we're not burning fossil fuels, then we might be able to explore and see how nature can heal itself and absorb carbon once we've stopped putting so much of it into the atmosphere.
We've got just about a minute left. I want to pivot back to your book. So you said that this one was basically sponsored by Disney, right?
So the publisher is Disney Hyperon Books. Yes.
Okay. I was going to ask you if you plan on writing a second book, but does it depend on how well this one does?
I mean, I would love to write another book with Issa and Darius. I would love to see what their senior year looks like, and I hope fans do too. And I also have been really inspired by the 3-year process of writing to even write more climate stories just of my own. My memoir is obviously a memoir based on real people, real events, but writing fiction is really fun. And I think there's so many climate and environmental stories to tell that I would love to try my hand at other stories. I think I'll have more than enough material for quite some time.
Okay, great. Is today the release date for the book?
So the book came out on Tuesday, July 2nd.
Oh, all right. So it's been out. How's it doing so far?
It's early days, but I really have enjoyed the reception online, and people seem to really, really like the characters and the messages of the story. So thrilled to hear more as more people get reading over the summer.
Well, we do have to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you have a website that you want to give out?
Yes, it'd be great if people want to check out briannacraft.com, and you can also follow me on Instagram at brianna.m.craft, and I would love to connect and hear what climate stories you would like to be told.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you. Best of luck with the book. I hope it does well.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the conversation. It's been really great.